It's the NFL Divisional Playoff Round, and you're watching Picks with David. Thanks for joining me for another edition right here on YouTube and Facebook as we discuss the NFL Divisional Round and the 4 games that will set up the conference championships. Let's begin at Arrowhead with the first game on Saturday. It's the AFC South champs, the Jacksonville Jaguars, at the AFC West champs, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Jacksonville Jaguars come off of a huge come-from-behind victory here against the Los Angeles Chargers, who took a big lead in Jacksonville and couldn't hold it. They folded like the choking dogs they are, and they've made changes because of that. But as we look at Jacksonville, the former #1 overall pick of the draft, Trevor Lawrence, leads the Jacksonville Jaguars into Kansas City, where they played each other earlier this season. Doug Peterson is very familiar with the Kansas City Chiefs and their coaching staff, as he was once the offensive coordinator for Andy Reid in Kansas City. He knows what kind of crazy plays that they'll draw up. He knows the kind of offense that they expect to face. And Jacksonville, having already played Kansas City, has some tape to work with. For the Kansas City Chiefs, they had the week off. They secured the #1 spot in the NFL's AFC conference by beating the Raiders in Las Vegas the final week of the season. They've had a chance to rest and prepare and get ready for this first game here in the divisional playoff round for them. Now, Kansas City won the game 27-17 in week 10 of this season. So it's been a little while since these teams have faced each other. Jacksonville has really come alive at the end of the season. They managed to knock off Tennessee twice. They managed to beat a few other teams along the way, and they come off a pretty happy win this last week in the wild card round at home. But now they come back and they're on the road. And so it's up to Jacksonville to do the things that they do best. And that means it's Trevor Lawrence to his array of receivers while they mix in the run with Travis Etienne. Kansas City, on the other hand, having rested and is mostly at full strength, we're probably not going to see Clyde Edwards-Helaire, whose spot has really kind of been taken over lately by Jerick McKinnon out of the backfield catching passes, a lot of touchdowns, and Kadarius Toney has filled in admirably for Mecole Hardman, who we probably won't see either. And so Patrick Mahomes, he threw 4 touchdown passes in the first matchup. The defense, will have an opportunity to redeem themselves as they gave up a couple of big plays against Jacksonville in the first matchup. But I really think that this is a different Jacksonville team than Kansas City saw earlier in the year. But when it all comes down to it, although Jacksonville may put up a lot of points, I think the Kansas City Chiefs still managed to win it and host the AFC Championship game next week. Game #2 on Saturday is the 6th seed New York Giants battling the #1 seed and NFC East champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. The New York Giants did what they had to do going into Minnesota and dispatching the Minnesota Vikings. Now they'll face the Philadelphia Eagles for the 3rd time this year. Now, in the earlier matchup, the Eagles, when they were hitting on all cylinders, they bombarded the Giants and beat them by over 20 points. But in the later game, when the Giants didn't play any of their main starters, Jalen Hurts came back to play the final week of the season. They did not seem like themselves. They seemed out of sync, and they let the Giants walk around on them a little bit. The Eagles managed to barely escape with a 6-point victory. And so I think this is going to be a very tight game. The Eagles have had the week off to prepare. They got the first round bye in the NFC. And these two teams know each other so well. Like I said, they played each other twice already this year, so they know what to expect from each other. Daniel Jones has really started to come on for the Giants, using his legs to extend plays, pick up first downs. Really, when you look at the way this season has gone, Brian Daboll has tried to mold Daniel Jones into a poor man's Josh Allen, using his ability to move around and also limiting how many passes he's had to throw. He's become more accurate, less fumbles, less interceptions. The running game has really started to come on with Saquon Barkley, spelled here and there by Matt Breida. And so they have a lot of confidence, having just beaten the Vikings. They know they can go on the road and win, and I think this is going to be a very hard game for the Eagles to get by and win. For the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, has an injured shoulder. He came back and he played so-so in the final week of the season. But when you look at Philadelphia, I think this entire game is going to have to be based, in my opinion, on defense and the running game. Now, Hurts does a lot of running himself, but he needs to take advantage of his backs in the backfield. Miles Sanders needs to get some touches. Kenneth Gainwell also. I know they've got some big play wide receivers in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but I think it's important that early on they use the running game to feel out the Giants, to get ahead in the game. They need to get the lead early. If they do not, the Giants are really going to believe they've got a shot to win this game. And I like the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that they are the better team overall, but I'm very concerned about the fact that the Eagles had this week off, so they're going to be even rustier than they were before when Hurts came back in the final week of the season. I think the Giants are dangerous, and I'm going to take the New York Giants to win the game in Philadelphia and advance to the NFC Championship game. Game number 3 of 4 on this divisional playoff weekend has us with a couple of the big dogs in the AFC. The AFC North champions, Cincinnati Bengals, the defending AFC champions, take on the AFC East champs, the Buffalo Bills, the favorite from the start of the season. Of course, one of the storylines in this game is that these teams did not get to complete the game during the regular season. Buffalo played at Cincinnati in the original game. Cincinnati got out to a 7-0 lead, and Buffalo came down and kicked a field goal to make it 7-3. On the second drive, that's when Damar Hamlin was injured, and the game was suspended and eventually canceled. And so now we're going to have, I'm sure, Damar Hamlin will lead them out of the tunnel, or there will be some sort of inspirational, device on their part to get the Buffalo Bills all riled up for this game. Cincinnati has looked like one of the best teams in the league all year long, with the exception of the first couple weeks of the year, while they learned to gel that new offensive line, which has some injuries, and they've regained their ability to run the football with both Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon. For the Buffalo Bills, they had a hard one last week. They played themselves into a corner after taking a big 17-0 lead against the Miami Dolphins. But turnovers by Josh Allen have led to other teams getting into the game and keeping it close. Miami, in my opinion, shouldn't have been in that game at all, and instead, they nearly won the game at the end. Buffalo has Cincinnati coming to town. Cincinnati played a tough game against the Baltimore Ravens, a game that I didn't think they should have been that close either. But instead, Bengals literally had to hang on and get a fumble return for a touchdown in order to vanquish the Baltimore Ravens without Lamar Jackson. So neither team looked very good last week as we go into this game. But I think that this is a statement game. Both teams obviously want to get to that AFC championship. The Bengals trying to get back for the second year in a row. The Bills trying to get back there for the first time in a couple of years. They know whoever wins this game is probably going to face their arch nemesis, the Kansas City Chiefs. And so I don't believe that either one of these teams is going to overlook the other. I think it will be a hard-fought game. And in the end, the team that has been the favorite all year long in the AFC, the Buffalo Bills, will eke it out against the Cincinnati Bengals. Final game of the divisional playoff weekend, the number 5 seeded Dallas Cowboys take on the 2 seed, the NFC West champs, the San Francisco 49ers. The Dallas Cowboys eliminated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in last week's Monday night playoff game. And I tell you, they did it in stunning fashion. A lot of people thought it would be a close game because of Tom Brady and because the Cowboys played on the road. I really felt that Dallas was going to win the game, but I didn't see them blowing them out as big as they did early on in the game before Tampa managed to get some garbage points at the end. Now, if their offense plays anything like it did in that game, where they start slow but then pick up the tempo later on, I still think they're going to have a pretty good shot against this 49ers team. The 49ers struggled early also against the Seattle Seahawks, but they picked up the pace in the second half and blew out the Seahawks in Levi Stadium. So you've got Brock Purdy starting as the third-string quarterback, and I'll be honest with you, he's the starter in my book at the start of next season. I didn't see anything out of Trey Lance that led me to believe that he could play anything close to what Purdy has done here at the end of this season. They've got all of their weapons available to them, from Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel in the backfield with Wilson Jr., all of those guys can run the ball. They can all catch the ball out of the backfield. Very good receivers in Brandon Ayuk, the tight end, in George Kittle. The defense is stellar for San Francisco. And it's going to need to be, because there are just as many stars on offense for the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys come in with their own big-time running game. Ezekiel Elliott is the hammer. Tony Pollard is the speed guy. You've got Dalton Schultz at tight end, who picks up touchdowns out of nowhere. And then they've got themselves a really good receiving corps. I like, that they brought in T.Y. Hilton. You've got, CeeDee Lamb and the other good players there on that team. If Dak Prescott could use his mobility and use his legs, extend plays, and also pick up some first downs, I really believe Dallas has got a shot in this game. But I think when it all comes down to it, the team that I had favored to make it to the Super Bowl at the beginning of the year, the San Francisco 49ers, are going to host the NFC Championship game. A look at the current playoff bracket, and there are some very interesting matchups that could come out of this week's games. Is it possible that the Giants do beat the Eagles, as I have suggested? Well, what if Dallas ends up hosting the NFC Championship game against the Giants if they knock off the 49ers? I would like the Cowboys over the New York Giants in that particular matchup. As of right now, I don't think it matters who wins between the Eagles and the Giants. I would take the winner of the Dallas-San Francisco game to advance to the Super Bowl. I think Jacksonville will have a chance against Kansas City, but it's not going to be the barn burner that the other game will be. I believe Kansas City is going to either host or be at the neutral site game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills. And so, for me, if Cincinnati were to sneak by it's really poetic justice that the Kansas City Chiefs will play against the Cincinnati Bengals for the second consecutive year in the AFC Championship game. But, it's also, I think, a big deal if Buffalo and Kansas City meet in Atlanta for that AFC title. They have, tussled with each other each of the last 2 years in the playoffs, and Kansas City has got the best of them. What will happen at a neutral site field between the two, only time will tell. So there you have it, another edition of Picks with David in the books here on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks a lot for joining me. We'll see you next week for our championship game edition of Picks with David.